Ministers and John Kelly and Hope Hicks being seated, and the President and the First Lady making their way into the Korean National Assembly. A historic speech in Seoul, South Korea tonight, only 30 miles from the demilitarized zone. Warm reception, standing ovation. From the highlights of the speech that were just literally released just moments ago, you see it's going to be a pretty tough speech by the President. Let's now just listen in.
Your Excellency, President Donald Trump and Madam First Lady, official U.S. delegates, distinguished guests from home and abroad, including diplomatic corps in Korea and members of the National Assembly. As Speaker of the National Assembly and on behalf of the Korean people, I extend my heartfelt welcome to the visit by President Donald Trump and First Lady Mrs. Melania Trump to the National Assembly. Mr. President and Mrs. Trump, you are the first U.S. President in 25 years to make a state visit to Korea, representing the United States of America as a great country and Korea's enduring and long-standing ally. And your speech to the National Assembly today marks the first speech to the Korean Parliament by the U.S. President in 24 years. It is an incredibly great honor and privilege to welcome you at the National Assembly on your first Asia tour in the first year of your administration. I believe that the presence of Mr. Trump and Mrs. Trump here at this gathering reaffirms the steadfastness and the great significance of our KUS alliance. Mr. President and Mrs. Trump, distinguished guests, members of the National Assembly, Korea's remarkable transformation from an aid recipient to a donor country was achieved on the basis of the blood shed by our two peoples who fought side by side during the Korean War and the rock-solid Korea-U.S. alliance. Starting from security alliance, our alliance has been evolving into a comprehensive alliance that has global implications extending beyond economic alliance. The RK-US alliance, recognized as having made a significant contribution to peace on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia, is now confronting grave nuclear and missile threats from North Korea. Our two countries have worked closely together to deter the growing nuclear threat from North Korea and to achieve the peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. As articulated by your inaugural address where you said, "Now arrives the hour of action," Mr. President is acting with great determination and commitment to make the North Korean nuclear issue a top priority like no other U.S. president in history. Allow me to take this opportunity to extend our deepest appreciation and respect to Mr. President for your role as great and peaceful mediator under your excellent leadership and great negotiating ability. I sincerely hope that your visit to Korea can serve as a new fulcrum for our deep friendship and our shared prosperity going forward and set a historic milestone in bringing peace to the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. Before we invite President Trump to deliver a speech, let me introduce you to First Lady Mrs. Melania Trump, who is beautiful and wise. Mrs. Trump, may I ask you to briefly rise from the seat to accept our warm welcome? Thank you. Now, let me introduce you to the leader of the world, the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Assembly Speaker Chung, distinguished members of this Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the extraordinary privilege to speak in this great chamber and to address your people on behalf of the people of the United States of America. In our short time in your country, Melania and I have been awed by its ancient and modern wonders, and we are deeply moved by the warmth of your welcome. Last night, President and Mrs. Moon showed us incredible hospitality in a beautiful reception at the Blue House. We had productive discussions on increasing military cooperation and improving the trade relationship between our nations on the principle of fairness and reciprocity. Through this entire visit, it has been both our pleasure and our honor to create and celebrate a long friendship between the United States and the Republic of Korea. This alliance between our nations was forged in the crucible of war and strengthened by the trials of history. From the Incheon landings to Pork Chop Hill, American and South Korean soldiers have fought together, sacrificed together, and triumphed together. Almost 67 years ago, in the spring of 1951, they recaptured what remained of this city where we are gathered so proudly today. It was the second time in a year that our combined forces took on steep casualties to retake this capital from the communists. Over the next weeks and months, the men soldiered through steep mountains and bloody battles. Driven back at times, they willed their way north to form the line that line for nearly 7 decades. By the time the armistice was signed in 1953, more than 36,000 Americans had died in the Korean War, with more than 100,000 others very badly wounded. They are heroes, and we honor them. We also honor and remember the terrible price the people of your country paid for their freedom. You lost hundreds of thousands of brave soldiers and countless innocent. Much of this great city of Seoul was reduced to rubble. Large portions of the country were scarred, severely was demolished. But as the entire world knows, over the next 2 generations, something miraculous happened on the southern half of this peninsula. Family by family, city by what is today one of the great nations of the world, and I congratulate you. In less than 1 lifetime, South Korea climbed from total devastation to among the wealthiest nations on earth. Today, your economy is more than 350 times larger than what it was in 1960. Life expectancy has risen from just 53 years to more than 82 years today. Like Korea And since my election exactly 1 year ago today, I celebrate with you. The United States is going through something of a miracle itself. Our stock market is at an all-time high. Unemployment is at a 17-year low. We are defeating ISIS. We are strengthening our judiciary, including a and on. Currently stationed in the vicinity of this peninsula are the three largest aircraft carriers, F-35 and F-18 fighter jets. In addition, we have nuclear submarines appropriately positioned. The United States, under my administration, is completely rebuilding its military and is spending hundreds of billions of dollars to the newest and finest military equipment anywhere in the world being built right now. I want peace through strength. Beyond what any other country has ever done. And in the end, we will work things out far better than anybody understands or can even appreciate. I know that the Republic of Korea, which has become a tremendously successful nation, will be a faithful ally of the United States very long into the future. What you have built is truly an political one. The proud, sovereign, and independent people of your nation demanded the right to govern themselves. You secured free parliamentary elections in 1988, the same year you hosted your first Olympics. Soon after, you elected your first civilian president in more than 3 decades. And when the republic you won faced financial crisis, you lined up by the millions to give your most prized keys to restore the promise of a better future for your children. More than money. It is measured in achievements of the mind and achievements of spirit. Over the last several decades, your scientists have engineered so many magnificent things. You've pushed the boundaries of technology, pioneered miraculous medical treatments, and emerged as leaders in unlocking roughly 40,000 books this year. Korean musicians fill concert halls all around the world. Young Korean students graduate from college at the highest rates of any country. And Korean golfers are some of the best on earth. In fact, and you know what I'm going to say, the Women's U.S. Open was held this year at Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, and it just happened to be one park, and 8 of the top 10 players were from Korea, and the top top four golfers, 1, 2, 3, 4, the top four were from Korea. Congratulations. Congratulations. Really something. Here in Seoul, architectural wonders like the 63 building and the Lotte World Tower, very beautiful, grace the sky and house the workers of many growing industries. Your citizens now help to feed the hungry, fight terrorism, and solve problems all over the world. And in a few months, a magnificent job at the 23rd Olympic Winter Games. Good luck. The Korean miracle extends exactly as far as the armies of free nations advanced in 1953, 25 miles to the north. There it stops. It all comes to an end. Dead stop. The flourishing ends, and the prison state of North Korea sadly begins. Workers in North Korea labor grueling hours in unbearable conditions for almost no pay. Recently, the entire working population was ordered to work for 70 days, live in homes without plumbing, and fewer than half have electricity. Parents bribe teachers in hopes of saving their sons and daughters from forced labor. More than 1 million North Koreans died of famine in the 1990s, and more continue to die of hunger today. Among children under the age of 5, nearly 30% of afflicted and are afflicted by stunted growth due to malnutrition. And yet, in $200 million, or almost half the money that it allocated to improve living standards for its people, to instead build even more monuments, towers, and statues to glorify its dictators. What remains of the meager harvest of the North Korean economy is distributed according to perceived loyalty to a twisted regime. Far from valuing its people as equal citizens, this cruel dictatorship measures indications of their allegiance to the state. Those who score the highest in loyalty may live in the capital city. Those who score the lowest starve. A small infraction by one citizen, such as accidentally staining a picture of the tyrant printed in a discarded newspaper, can wreck the social credit rank of his entire family for many decades. Suffer in gulags, toiling in forced labor, and enduring torture, starvation, rape, and murder on a constant basis. In one known instance, a 9-year-old boy was imprisoned for 10 years because his grandfather was accused of treason. In another, a student was beaten in school for forgetting. Soldiers have kidnapped foreigners and forced them to work as language tutors for North Korean spies. In the part of Korea that was a stronghold for Christianity before the war, Christians and other people of faith who were found praying or holding a religious book of any kind are now detained, tortured, and in many cases, even executed. North Korean women are forced to abort babies that are considered ethnically inferior. And if these babies are born, the newborns are murdered. One woman's baby born to a Chinese father was taken away in a bucket. The guard said it did not deserve to live because it was impure. So why would China feel an obligation to help North Korea? The horror of life in North Korea is so complete that citizens pay bribes to government officials to have themselves exported aboard as slaves. They would rather be slaves than live in North Korea. To attempt to flee is a crime punishable by death. One person who escaped remarked, "When I think about it now, I was not a human being. I was more like what life was supposed to be." And so, on this peninsula, we have watched the results of a tragic experiment in a laboratory of history. It is a tale of one people, but two Koreas. One Korea in which the people took control and justice of civilization and incredible achievement. And another Korea in which leaders imprisoned their people under the banner of tyranny, fascism, and oppression. The result of this experiment are in, and they are totally conclusive. When the Korean War began in 1950, the two Koreas were approximately equal in GDP per capita. But by the 1990s, South Korea's wealth had surpassed North Korea's by more than 10 times. And today, the South's economy is over 40 times larger. So you started the same a short while ago. And considering the misery wrought by the North Korean dictatorship, it is no surprise that it has been forced to take increasingly desperate measures to prevent its people from understanding this brutal contrast. Because the regime fears the truth above all else, it forbids virtually all contact with the outside world. Not just my speech today, but even the most commonplace facts of South Korean life are forbidden knowledge to the North Korean people. Western and South Korean music is banned. Possession of foreign media is a crime, punishable by death. Citizens spy on fellow citizens is subject to surveillance. In place of a vibrant society, the people of North Korea are bombarded by state propaganda practically every waking hour of the day. North Korea is a country ruled as a cult. At the center of this military cult is a deranged belief in the leader's destiny to rule as parent protector over a conquered Korean peninsula and an enslaved Korean people. The more successful South Korea becomes, the more decisively you discredit the dark fantasy at the heart of the Kim regime. In this way, the very existence of a thriving South Korean republic threatens the very survival of the North Korean are living proof that a free and independent Korea not only can, but does stand strong, sovereign, and proud among the nations of the world. the strength of the nation does not come from the false glory of a tyrant. It comes from the true and powerful glory of a strong and great people, the people of the Republic of Korea. A Korean people who are free to live, to flourish, to worship, to love, to build, and to grow their own destiny. In this republic, the people have done what no dictator ever could. You took, with the help of the United States, you had a dream, a Korean dream, and you built that dream into a great reality. In so doing, you performed the miracle on the Han that we see all around us, from the stunning skyline of Seoul to the plains and peaks of this beautiful landscape. You have done it freely. You have done it happily. And you have done it in your own very beautiful way. This reality, this wonderful place, your success is the greatest cause of anxiety, alarm, and even panic to the North Korean regime. That is why the Kim regime seeks conflict abroad to distract from total failure that they suffer at home. Since the so-called armistice, there have been hundreds of North Korean attacks on Americans and South Koreans. These attacks have included the capture and torture of the brave American soldiers of the USS Pueblo, and drowning of a U.S. surveillance plane that killed 31 American servicemen. The regime has made numerous lethal incursions in South Korea, attempted to assassinate senior leaders, attacked South Korean ships, and tortured Otto Warmbier, ultimately leading to that fine young man's death. All the while, the regime has pursued nuclear weapons with the deluded objective, and that objective we are not going to let it have. We are not going to let it have. All of Korea is under that spell, divided in half. South Korea will never allow what's going on in North Korea to continue to happen. The North Korean regime has pursued its nuclear and ballistic missile programs in defiance of every assurance, agreement, and commitment it has made to the United States and its allies. It's broken all of those commitments. After promising to freeze its plutonium program in 1994, it repeated the benefits of the deal and then immediately continued its illicit nuclear activities. In 2005, after years of diplomacy, the dictatorship agreed to ultimately abandon its nuclear programs and return to the Treaty on Non-Proliferation. But it never did, and worse, it tested the very weapons it said it was going to give up. In 2009, the United States gave a hand of engagement. The regime responded by sinking a South Korean Navy ship, killing 46 Korean sailors. To this day, it continues to launch missiles.
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. President Trump and First Lady Melania just landing there in Beijing. You can see it on the left-hand side of your screen. They're walking down from Air Force One now, being greeted there